If you follow British politics in any way, even in a cursory way where you dip your toe in every so often, you will know one thing, and that is that the Conservative Party are really a party of contradictions. They will say one thing and do another. On one hand, they will say that there is no money left in the country, that Labour spent all the money. While on the other hand, they'll have money for Conservative projects, Conservative towns, money for Conservative backers for PPE projects, or, enough money to bribe the DUP to prop them up in government. They are there. But the big thing that we are talking about today is, of course, trade. Because Brexiteers are all about free trade when it suits them. There is no point us joining the Comprehensive Pacific Trade Partnership when we have a far, far more advanced and far, far better market sitting on our doorstep known as the European Union. But of course, we can't do that because, again, it doesn't suit their purposes, because they want trade liberalisation. And of course, when they say that, they basically mean they want 0% tariffs on stuff coming into this country. Means that our industries in the UK will suffer, and suffer from competition from not only cheap imports, but other countries could have subsidised industries that also would give them a massive edge over competition in here than our own industries that are essentially here. Agriculture being the main recent one that is becoming, there seems to be the big battleground, and of course there's steel as well, but a lot of people surprisingly are ignoring this as well. So before we jump into today's article, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button, and of course down below there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So on with today's article. And this one today comes from the New Statesman. And the title is, "The Brexiteers are only free traders when it suits them." Why are so many Brexiteers excited by a trade deal with Australia? In the advance of the relevant Cabinet Committee meeting, which determined the UK's negotiating position, our broadcast studios and newspaper columnists were full of Brexit-backing commentators arguing that it is a matter of vital importance, and one obnoxiously tweeted that if the government caves on scrapping tariffs on Aussie food, then Brexit wouldn't have been worth it. Simple as that. The government's own economic analysis hardly suggests that this is a first-order issue. Then a benefactor deal, this benefactor deal would only increase GDP by around 0.01% to 0.02%. To put that into context, at best, this is out 100 and 200th of the Office for Budget Responsibility's estimate for the cost of Brexit. This is worth over 4% of GDP. So there are potential risks. Not only will the Conservative MPs in rural constituencies face a backlash, the perception of selling out our farmers will be a gift to the Scottish nationalists. And any deal on agriculture might make it harder to resolve issues under the Northern Ireland Protocol. And there are questions about animal welfare and the environmental costs as well. Nonetheless, the decision has apparently been made to seek to conclude a deal with Australia this month. In truth, the substance of any such agreement will not be earth-shattering one way or the other. But the decision to proceed tells us a lot about the government's motivation. First, the importance of the deal is not really about Australia, it's about setting the temperature for future trade agreements, whether for New Zealand or the wider Trans-Pacific Partnership or the supposed big prize, the US. Second, it locks Brexit in. Many Brexiteers worry that unless we properly break free from it, the gravitational pull of the EU will result in a future relationship becoming ever closer. They tell themselves that the political momentum might be divergence for now, but just you wait. The Ramona establishment will be pushing for full convergence all too soon. By signing up to new trade deals and creating new facts on the ground, the Brexiteers hope that we will move further and faster and irrevocably away from the EU. For some, there is a third motivation as well, such as the distinct emotional attachment to what no one will quite calls any longer our kith and kin. There is talk of our oldest relationship, wartime alliances and a common language, and a shared head of state. The Australians, the New Zealanders and the Canadians are not really foreigners. Fourth, the strongest advocates for this deal genuinely see themselves as free traders in the tradition of Peel and Gladstone, Colburn and Bright. When they hear critics of the deal complain about Australia's climate and the size makes the country much better suited to beef farming than the UK, and that is constituents' unfair competition, or that Australian exports will simply increase more than UK exports. They hear the arguments and protestations, and apparently putting the interests of producers over consumers, it has to be said, they have a point. The case for free trade is a powerful one. It lowers the costs and increases choice for consumers. It allows greater specialisation and efficiency. It has driven extraordinary growth and prosperity across the world in the last 200 years. The irony is that those most cheering on free trade with Australia were also the most enthusiastic about Brexit, and ripping up a far more advanced trade deal with far more an important market with far greater benefits to producers and consumers. Deep down, the more realistic free trading Brexiteers know this. Perhaps they are comfortable prioritising sovereignty over minimising trade barriers, or they might tell themselves that non-tariff barriers don't really matter, and therefore we don't need regulatory coordination to eliminate them. But they found themselves arguing for a course of action, leaving the EU. That was completely inconsistent with their sincerest belief on free trade. With the row over tariffs on Australian beef, they may very well be the Manchester Liberals, internationalists and radicals that they want to be. Their views on economics and the UK's place in the world are once more aligned. The Brexiteer free traders consider themselves to be upholders of Thatcherism, an economic project that was all about rolling back the state, deregulation and free markets. We can argue that over the economic record, and I suspect that we have a more positive view than the average reader, but what is not in doubt is the objective of Thatcher's government was to make the UK's economy, shall we say, more open, dynamic, competitive and efficient. Modern British Euroscepticism was born in the late 1980s as a consequence of the perception of the European community, as it was then. And this was impediment to this project. An imposter of an imposer of bureaucracy and an obstacle to deregulation. And yet the consequences for leaving the EU, especially the single market, created in large part by Thatcher, has been the imposition of red tape, barriers to trade and a Conservative government that will not pursue deregulatory policies for fear of offending its new coalition of voters. You see yourself as a bold economic reformer, wherever a Peel or a Thatcher. What is, however, their economic justification for Brexit? There is no visible deregulatory agenda, and the current $350 million promised a week for the NHS was always bogus. The fifth and most important reason for the emphasis placed on the Australian trade deal, that however meagre it is all they have got left. And that is ultimately the situation we are in. We all know this isn't going to benefit the UK in any way, shape, form or whatever. And we have been protected all this time. We haven't had to really engage in free trade. The idea of free trade policies and trade deals has never been a central focus of our politics because that's always been done in the EU. The EU have handled that. We've just rubber stamped them because it's been overwhelmingly good trade deals. And now we have to go and do this ourselves. And the idea of actually discussing free trade in Parliament actually scares a lot of these Brexiteers because they know deep down that even though they claim to be free trade, why on earth are we not part of the EU? It makes so much far more sense to be a member of our closest market and be with them than anything else. But of course, they hold contradictory ideas. while they like the idea of the single market, they want less deregulation, they want more deregulation and less rights for workers and consumers. So at the moment, they are constantly at loggerheads, and they daren't do anything about it. I've said for the longest time, since the beginning of this year, this government is going to be desperate in any way, shape or form to try and prove that Brexit is some sort of overwhelming success, when the evidence is very clear it is anything but. So, as always, thank you for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.